It was just another night in 1991 when patrol officer Emily Rivers left for her shift. She kissed her husband, told him she'd be back by morning, and then vanished. Her squad car was found hours later, still running, parked on a quiet rural road. No sign of a fight, no radio call, no body. For 7 years, her disappearance haunted the town. Rumors spread like wildfire. Did someone target her? Was she hiding something? Or did she just walk away from it all? But in 1998, a group of kids exploring an old farmhouse found something buried under the floorboards. What they uncovered opened a case everyone thought was dead and exposed a truth no one ever saw coming. It was a Thursday night, September 12th, 1991. Officer Emily Rivers stood in the hallway of her small home, zipping up her patrol jacket. Her husband, Michael, leaned against the doorway, holding a cup of coffee. He smiled and said, "Be careful tonight." Emily smiled back. "Always am. I'll be home by morning." She leaned in, kissed him, and gave a little wave as she stepped outside. Her boots echoed down the porch steps. Michael didn't know it yet, but that would be the last time he'd ever see her. Emily walked to her cruiser parked out front, started the engine, and pulled away into the night. On the outside, she looked calm, just another shift in a quiet town. But if you looked close, you'd see something different in her eyes. Not fear exactly, but something close. Like she knew something wasn't right. At 8:43 p.m., Officer Emily Rivers called in to dispatch. 10-38. Silver pickup, no tags. Northfield Road, just past the grain silo. Dispatch answered, "Copy that. Need backup?" Emily replied, "Negative. Just checking it out. Should be quick." That was it. No stress in her voice. No code words. Nothing strange. She had pulled over hundreds of cars before. This one didn't seem any different. A few minutes passed. Then 10. Then 30. Dispatch called her back. No answer. Another officer drove out to check on her location. When they reached the area, she was gone. The truck was gone. And Emily? No trace. That routine traffic stop became the last time anyone heard her voice. She didn't press her panic button. She didn't call for help. She just disappeared. Around 10:15 p.m., 2 officers searching the area found something strange. Emily's cruiser. It was parked on a narrow dirt road near the edge of a cornfield, about 5 miles from the location of the traffic stop. The engine was still running. The headlights were on, pointed toward the trees. Inside, her police radio sat, untouched. Her duty belt was there. Her gun was still holstered. The driver's side door was closed. The seat was empty. No blood. No sign of a fight. No footprints. No tire marks. Just her car, sitting there like she'd parked it and vanished into thin air. They checked the surrounding woods. Nothing. They knocked on every nearby farmhouse. No one had seen or heard anything. It didn't make sense. Cops don't just walk off in the middle of a shift, and Emily was the last person anyone would expect to run. So what happened between that traffic stop and the moment her cruiser ended up here? No one could answer that. Not then. By sunrise, the whole town knew Emily Rivers, one of their own, was missing. People started showing up at the police station with flashlights, ready to help. Some brought search dogs. Farmers opened their land. Teenagers passed out flyers. Helicopters scanned the fields. Officers walked shoulder to shoulder through ditches and woods. Divers checked ponds and creeks. Nothing. Michael stayed out all night, calling her name. Day after day, the search continued, but there were no leads, no witnesses, no camera footage, no helpful tips. Just her car and silence. Whispers started to spread. She wouldn't just leave. Maybe she was taken. Or maybe she found out something she wasn't supposed to. In a town that's small, Rumors grew fast, and with each day, Emily stayed missing. One question kept getting louder. What really happened that night? Michael sat in their quiet kitchen, the clock ticking loud in the silence. Emily's coffee cup was still on the table, cold, untouched. He hadn't slept. Every time the phone rang, he jumped. Every time a car passed, he ran to the window. But it was never her. He called the station again. "Any update?" he asked. The answer was always the same. "We're working on it." By the second night, Michael broke down. He opened Emily's closet and sat on the floor, clutching her jacket. Her scent still lingered. He rocked back and forth, whispering. She wouldn't just leave. She wouldn't. People brought food, offered prayers. But Michael didn't want food. He wanted answers, and none came. As far as he was concerned. Something terrible had happened, and whoever did it was still out there. When no answers came, the whispers started. Maybe she ran off, someone said at the diner. Could have had a secret life. Others weren't so kind. Maybe she was cheating, got caught, or she was into something illegal. Drugs, money. Small towns don't do well with silence. So they filled it with theories. Even people who loved Emily began to wonder. She was brave, yes, but she had been acting strange, quiet, nervous. Someone claimed they saw her arguing with another officer 2 weeks before she vanished. No proof, just talk. Others blamed Michael. What if the husband did it? Someone whispered outside the grocery store. Truth didn't matter. The mystery had taken on a life of its own, and it wasn't just about where Emily went anymore. Now it was about what she might have been hiding all along. By the end of the week, the sheriff stood in front of news cameras. "We're doing everything we can," he said. "Every lead is being followed." He tried to sound confident, but the truth was they had nothing. No tire tracks, no fingerprints, no signs of a struggle. Emily had vanished like smoke. Reporters asked if foul play was suspected. The sheriff said, "We're not ruling anything out." Behind the scenes, things were tense. Officers argued over strategy. Some believed she left by choice. Others thought she'd been taken. A few feared something worse. Someone from inside the department might know more than they were saying. Search maps filled the squad room walls. Red pins, blue flags. A dozen tips came in every day. None led anywhere. The case files stacked up, but the answers didn't. Single quotes T. Meanwhile, Michael stood outside every morning, watching the road. Waiting. And waiting. But no one ever pulled into the driveway. And Emily never came home. Before she vanished, everyone in town knew Officer Emily Rivers. She wasn't just any cop. She was the one who stayed late after shifts to help elderly neighbors. The one who carried stuffed animals in her trunk for scared kids. The one who talked down a man with a gun without ever drawing hers. She was a hero, said Mrs. Dorsey, who ran the bakery. If your kid went missing, you wanted Emily on that call. She had awards, thank you letters, and a spotless record. At school events, parents would point her out. "That's Officer Rivers," they'd say. "She keeps us safe." So when she disappeared, it didn't just scare people, it shattered something. Because if someone like Emily could vanish without a trace, then maybe no one was safe. And maybe everything people believed about her wasn't the whole story. At first, no one wanted to admit it. But when detectives started digging into Emily's final weeks, something didn't sit right. She had missed 2 morning briefings. That wasn't like her. One time, she forgot to file a report, something she'd never done in 10 years. Her patrol logs were messy. Her shift hours had gaps. A neighbor said they saw her sitting in her car outside her house one night. Just sitting. Engine running, lights off. Her captain remembered asking if she was okay. She smiled and said, "Just tired." But now that smile felt fake. Michael also mentioned she had stopped going to church with him. skipped a friend's baby shower, slept less, talked less. Something was changing inside her. And it started weeks before she vanished. About a week before she disappeared, Michael came home early from work. Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at an envelope. He asked what it was. She quickly hid it under some papers and smiled like nothing was wrong. But that night, as they were getting ready for bed, Emily finally said something strange. "I think something bad is coming," she whispered. Michael looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She shook her head. I can feel it. I can't explain it, but I think I've seen something I wasn't supposed to see." He pressed her. "Emily, what are you talking about?" But she wouldn't say more. She just kissed his cheek and went to sleep. The next morning, the envelope was gone. Michael didn't bring it up again. Now, looking back, he wishes he had, because that quiet warning might have been the key to everything. Emily's patrol partner, Officer Dana Long, still remembers her behavior during those last few shifts. She kept checking the rear-view mirror, Dana said, every few minutes, like clockwork. Dana asked her once, "You think someone's following us?" Emily hesitated, then nodded slightly. "I don't know. Maybe." But she didn't give names. Didn't explain. She stopped taking coffee breaks. Ate in the car. Always parked where she could see every exit. She was alert. Not scared exactly, but tense, Dana recalled. One night, she even asked Dana to switch shifts at the last second. No reason given. It felt like she was hiding from someone, Dana said, but she wouldn't say who. And then, a few days later, she was gone. After speaking with Emily's partner, investigators returned to the station. They asked to see her locker. At first glance, it was neat. Her uniform hung on one side, spare boots, a small makeup bag. Nothing strange. They checked every pocket, every pouch. No note, no hidden envelope, no flash drive. But in the back corner, wedged between two books, they found something personal. A small, worn notebook, black leather cover, pages frayed. It wasn't official, not standard issue. It looked like something Emily had kept for herself. Most of the pages were filled with quick scribbles, license plates, addresses, timestamps. But one page near the middle was torn out. Clean rip. Like someone didn't want that page to be found. The rest of the notebook was vague. It hinted at something, but didn't explain anything. Whatever was on that missing page, someone made sure it was gone. That torn-out page changed everything. Detectives started asking tougher questions. What if Emily wasn't just a victim? What if she had been chasing something or someone? Some officers believed she might have been investigating something on her own. Maybe something she wasn't supposed to. She could have found a dirty cop, or stumbled into a drug route, or uncovered something buried in the department's past. Others thought maybe she wasn't just looking for answers. Maybe she was being hunted. Still, a few held on to darker ideas. What if she had secrets too? Could she have been involved in something? Was the missing page a record she didn't want found? Theories swirled like a storm. Corruption. Revenge. Blackmail. Mistaken identity. Every new idea led to 5 more. But nothing solid. Nothing that could explain why a trusted patrol officer would vanish from her cruiser in the middle of a shift and never call for help. The investigation was no longer just about finding Emily. Now, it was about figuring out who she really was. One officer remembered a moment from 2 years before Emily snapping at a detective during a briefing. It didn't seem like her. She was always calm, he said. That day she wasn't. Another recalled how she had refused backup on multiple calls in her last month. She used to joke she didn't need help, her sergeant said. But maybe she wasn't joking. Michael, her husband, was interviewed again. He admitted something new. Emily had stopped wearing her wedding ring on shift. She said it was for safety. But now, he wasn't sure. The small-town image of Emily, the perfect cop, the perfect wife, started to crack. People wondered, was she targeted because she was good? Or because she knew too much? Or because she wasn't who they thought she was at all? No one had answers. Just more questions. Add. First, people believed they'd find Emily. Search teams kept going for weeks. Flyers stayed taped to windows. Her face was on the news every night. But by winter, the calls slowed down. Search groups shrank. Reporters moved on to other stories. Even her picture on the town bulletin board started to fade under the sun. No new leads, no evidence, no answers. The sheriff gave fewer updates. Eventually, none at all. In quiet moments, some people started saying it out loud. She's gone. The case that once shook the whole town turned into silence, with no real answers. Wild stories took over. Some said Emily had fallen in love with someone secretly and ran away, left her life behind. Others claimed she was working undercover, and the wrong people found out. A few thought it was a cartel hit. One caller even said she saw Emily in another state, living under a new name. Police followed every lead. Nothing panned out. One theory said she faked it all, planned her own disappearance to escape something dark in her past. Another rumor claimed she was pregnant and left out of shame. People who had never spoken to Emily had plenty to say about her now. They made up connections. They dug through her family. They searched her old social media posts for clues. None of them really knew her, but that didn't stop them from guessing and guessing and guessing, while the truth stayed buried. Michael never stopped believing. She'd come home. He kept her photo on the fireplace mantel, wore his wedding ring every day, said goodnight to her out loud. He even set a plate for her at dinner. Every year on her birthday, he baked a chocolate cake, her favorite. People told him to move on. He didn't listen. She didn't leave us. He told a reporter once. She didn't just walk away. He drove to the old search areas sometimes, sat in his truck, just stared at the trees. He said if she was still out there, he wanted her to know he hadn't stopped looking. Not one stop. By 1993. Things inside the police department started to change. New officers were hired. Old ones retired. Training manuals were updated. Patrol cars got new paint. Emily's name stopped coming up in meetings. Her locker was cleaned out. Her photo was taken off the break room wall. No one said it out loud, but they were moving on. Some said it was just how things had to be. You can't carry every case forever. Others admitted it felt wrong. She gave everything, one officer whispered, and we just erased her. But in the file room, her case folder stayed open, and deep down, a few people still wondered, was someone in that very building hiding something? While most had moved on, one man couldn't. Retired Detective Ray Morrison sat in a small home office lined with case files. He was in his 60s now, gray-haired, slower but sharp, and every single week he'd reread Emily's file. He had worked with her briefly back in the late 80s, said she was sharp as hell, always asked the right questions, always saw what others missed. When she vanished, Ray had a bad feeling. But now, years later, that feeling had only grown worse. She didn't just disappear, he told a reporter. Something's off. There are pieces missing. He noticed details others missed, like the torn notebook page and a strange gap in her radio, logs that no one had flagged. Ray believed someone inside the department had covered something up. He didn't care about rumors. He wanted facts, and he wasn't letting this go. Ray started making quiet calls. He met with former officers, some at diners, others in their garages or backyards away from anyone listening. Most gave him the same look. Don't ask. They said the case had been too messy, too high up, better left alone. But one man cracked. A former evidence. Clerk nervous, sweating, shared something strange. He remembered a folder that went missing the same week Emily vanished. It had no case number, but it had names. Officer names. One was circled in red dot. No one reported stolen dot. It just disappeared. Ray. Pressed him. Who took it? The man wouldn't say. Just shook his head and said, it wasn't someone you question. That was enough. Ray knew what that meant. Someone high up had access. And if they went to the trouble of erasing a file, then whatever Emily found before she vanished, it had to be big. Ray typed up a request for the missing folder. Officially, he used the records office, cited protocol, and followed the rules. But days passed, then weeks. No reply. When he followed up, they told him the file never existed, that he must be mistaken, that nothing by that description was ever logged. Ray knew better. He printed what he had: interviews, notes, copies of old reports, and started building a titters. Private timeline. It was thin, but it was something. Then one morning, he walked out to his car. There was a note tucked under the wiper. Full words. Let it go, Ray. No signature. Just blocky, rushed handwriting. His blood ran cold. He wasn't afraid easily. But this felt different. He was being watched. That same week, Ray collapsed while mowing his lawn. The doctors called it a mild stroke. He recovered, but barely. And after that, he stopped calling people. He stopped asking questions. Emily's case file stayed in his office drawer, untouched. He still believed the truth was there. But now, someone else would have to find it. Because Ray Morrison had finally stopped digging. It was July 1998. 4 teenagers, 2 boys, 2 girls, rode their bikes to the old farmhouse on the edge of town. Locals called it the haunted house. It had been empty for years. The windows were broken. The front door barely hung on its hinges. Paint peeled off the siding like dead skin. They laughed nervously as they stepped inside. The floors creaked. Cobwebs brushed their faces. "Bet you won't go upstairs," one boy said. The others backed away. But Jesse, the oldest, grinned. "Watch me." He climbed the rotting staircase, flashlight in hand. Each step groaned under his feet. At the top. He paused. Nothing up here. Then, suddenly, crack. The floor beneath him gave way. He screamed as he dropped out of sight. The others ran up, panicked. Jesse wasn't moving, and under him was something none of them could explain. Jesse had fallen through the floor. He landed in a dark, dusty crawl space. He was bleeding from his elbow, but conscious. "I'm okay," he groaned. Sitting up. But then his hand touched something. It wasn't dirt. It was bone. At first, he thought it was part of the old house. Maybe a dead animal. Then his flashlight beam landed on the skull, and he froze. The others called down to him. "What is it?" Jesse didn't answer. He stared at the hollow eye sockets, the broken jaw, the long bones stretched in a shallow pit. Hands tied, body twisted. "No," Jesse whispered. No. They ran to the nearest house and called 911. Within an hour, police cars and yellow tape surrounded the farmhouse. The teens sat on the porch, pale and shaking. Officers pulled Jesse out. Paramedics checked him. He was fine, but he wouldn't stop whispering one thing over and over. It was a person. By morning, the old farmhouse was locked down tight. Detectives walked through slowly, carefully. Crime scene techs in white suits swept the area. Under the broken floorboard, they found what Jesse had seen: a skeleton in a shallow grave. The bones were mostly intact, but the hands were tied behind the back with old rope. The skull had a large fracture, like it had been hit hard, maybe with a blunt object. There was no clothing left. No ID. Just bones, dust, and silence. They took photographs, collected soil samples, and scanned the rest of the house. No one found anything else. But they all knew one thing for sure. This wasn't an accident. Someone had hidden this body here, and they never thought anyone would find it. Until now, the remains were taken to the state lab. 2 days later, dental records confirmed what no one wanted to believe. The skeleton belonged to Officer Emily Rivers. She had been buried under that farmhouse for nearly 7 years. The sheriff made the announcement at a press conference. Reporters gasped. Some officers cried. Michael, now older and remarried, stood in the back. His face was blank, shattered. She was under our noses the whole time, one deputy whispered. Forensic teams gave more details. The bones showed signs of blunt force trauma, likely killed by a single strike to the head. No evidence of drugs. No gunshot wounds. Just violence and silence. The rope used to bind her wrists was standard issue used by law enforcement. That detail changed everything. This wasn't just a cold case reopened. This was a murder. And someone in that quiet town had buried the truth. The moment the sheriff said her name, Emily Rivers, the whole town froze. People stopped what they were doing. Some cried. Others just stared at the TV in shock. Within hours, candles were lit outside the police station. Flowers, cards, and old photos appeared on the steps. It felt like 1991 all over again. Local news ran tribute pieces. Former classmates, old friends, even strangers spoke about her kindness, her strength, her smile. Michael stood in front of reporters, holding back tears. He didn't say much. Just one line. They buried her like trash. No one could look him in the eyes after that. Because now it was real. She hadn't run. She hadn't disappeared. Emily Rivers had been murdered, and someone had kept that secret for 7 long years. The investigation turned inward. Detectives made a list of every officer who had worked with Emily in 1991. One by one, they brought them in. Some were retired. Some had moved away. A few were still with the department. Each was asked the same questions. Where were you that night? Did Emily ever seem afraid? Did she mention anything strange? Some had answers ready. Others didn't. One officer claimed he barely knew her, but his patrol log said they shared shifts for 3 months. Another said she was always happy, but his supervisor recalled she filed a formal complaint just weeks before vanishing. A few looked nervous, shifted in their chairs, asked for lawyers. One even refused to answer anything at all. Whispers began to spread through the station. Someone was lying, and the pressure was building, because whoever had done this had worn the same badge. Detectives pulled the property records for the old farmhouse. What they found stunned them. In 1991, the house had been owned by Sergeant Neil Carter, a respected officer, and Emily's former mentor. He had retired quietly in 1993, moved to a cabin 3 towns over. No scandal, no warning, just left. Blueprints of the farmhouse revealed something else. That crawl space where Emily's body was found was not part of the original design. It had been added later, sealed off, hidden under the upstairs floor. Whoever buried her there had planned it. This wasn't panic. It was controlled, deliberate. Detectives pulled Carter's old personnel file. Clean record. Dozens of commendations. No complaints. But then they found something small. A 1-line note from 1991. Possible conflict with Officer Rivers. Closed with verbal resolution. No one had ever followed up. Now, Carter's name moved to the top of the suspect board. People who had once called him a hero were suddenly asking hard questions. Why was her body in his house? Why didn't he ever report seeing her that night? And most of all, what else had he been hiding? Detectives pulled up the property records for the farmhouse where Emily's body was found. They expected a stranger's name, maybe an old owner no one remembered. but what they saw left them speechless. The house had once belonged to Sergeant Neil Carter, Emily's former supervisor, mentor, and friend. He had bought the place in 1986 and sold it in late 1992, just 1 year after Emily disappeared. Carter had trained Emily when she was fresh out of the academy. He was one of the most respected men in the department, calm, careful, by the book. Everyone trusted him. So why hadn't his name come up earlier? And more important, why didn't he say anything when Emily went missing? Detectives didn't waste time. They got a warrant, pulled old shift schedules, and tracked down Carter's address. He was living alone now in a small house just outside town. They knocked on his door the next morning. And this time, they brought questions they already knew he wouldn't want to answer. Neil Carter opened the door slowly. He was 74, now thin, gray, quiet. His eyes were tired. His voice was soft. They told him they were reopening the Emily Rivers case. He nodded and let them in. Sitting across from two detectives, Neil kept his hands folded. He said he hadn't seen Emily in years before she vanished. Said he barely remembered the farmhouse. That place? I sold it forever ago, he mumbled. He didn't ask why they were there. Didn't ask about the remains. He just sat still, blinking slowly, answering in short sentences. To the detectives, it felt rehearsed. Too calm, too careful, like a man who had waited a long time for this day to come, but still hoped they wouldn't find him. Detectives slid a photo across the table. It showed Neil and Emily in uniform, standing together in 1989. They were in front of the same farmhouse. Both were smiling. Neil stared at it. For a long time, his hands began to tremble. He reached for his glass of water, but didn't drink. That was a long time ago, he said softly. Detectives leaned in. You told us you hadn't been to the house in years before she vanished. Neil didn't respond. Were you there the night she died? Still no answer. Just the sound of the clock ticking on the wall. One of the detectives opened a second folder. Inside, maps, timelines, and proof the house had been vacant at the time Emily disappeared, except for one key, Neil's. And that's when his eyes changed, like something cracked inside him, like the mask he'd worn for years had finally slipped. Neil sighed. Then whispered, She trusted me. The room went silent. She came to my house one night, he said. She was scared, shaking. She said she found something. He paused. Names, badge numbers, money drops, dates, all written down. She didn't say where she got it, just that it was bad, really bad. He looked up. She didn't know who to trust. She thought someone was watching her. She said if anything happened to her, I should keep the folder safe. Did you? A detective asked. Neil hesitated, then shook his head. No, I looked at it, and I got scared too. He said he didn't know what to do, that he burned the folder. He claimed he didn't hurt her, that she left and never came back, but his hands kept shaking, and he wouldn't look anyone in the eye. The detectives didn't believe him, and deep down, Neil knew they were right. Neil sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. She had a list, he said quietly, and it was bad. Detectives leaned in. He described a folder Emily had brought to his house late one night. Inside were handwritten notes, copied files, and typed names. There were numbers tied to drug seizures amounts. That didn't match official reports. Evidence logs that were marked as destroyed, but never should have been. And payroll documents showing certain officers claiming double shifts they never worked. She told me, Neil said, it was all connected. Someone was funneling drug money through the department. Neil admitted. He was terrified. He said the folder felt like a death sentence. She said she was trying to be careful, but she didn't trust anyone at the station, not even her partner. He took a shaky breath. She wasn't supposed to see that list. And whoever it belonged to wasn't going to let her keep it. Neil looked down at the table. I told her to burn it, he said, to walk away, pretend she never saw it. But Emily wouldn't do it. She said, if I don't say something, who will? Neil tried to warn her. She had no backup, no support, and whoever was behind it, they were watching. She told me cars kept following her home. Phone clicks during calls. Once, her brakes didn't work, right? She thought someone messed with them. He said, Emily started sleeping with her lights on, started carrying 2 radios. She stopped laughing, Neil whispered. Stopped smiling. He begged her again. Let it go. But Emily refused. She believed in the badge, Neil said. She thought if she just followed the rules, the truth would win. But by then, it was too late. She didn't know how deep it went, didn't know who was involved. And the night she gave him that folder, she told him she only made 1 copy. I asked her where the original was, Neil said. She wouldn't say. Then he looked up, and the next night, she was gone. The room was dead quiet. Then Neil spoke again, this time slower. She wasn't paranoid, he said. They really were watching her. Detectives pressed him. Who, Neil? Who was she afraid of? He didn't answer right away. Then he gave them names. 3 of them, all former officers. 2 had already left the department, but the 3rd was still active, still wore the uniform, still carried a gun. The room shifted. The air felt heavy. Neil insisted he didn't kill Emily. He swore he hadn't seen her after she left his house, but he was sure of one thing. She didn't vanish by accident. He said, someone made her disappear. One of the detectives stepped outside to make a call. The name Neil gave last matched a name from Emily's notebook. The one page that hadn't been torn out. It was underlined twice. The detectives knew what came next. They weren't just chasing a ghost anymore. They were hunting a killer, and he was still out there, wearing the same badge Emily once did. After Neil names, detectives went back to Emily's folder. They spread out the pages on a table, handwritten notes, copied reports, logs of phone calls, and maps. One name kept coming up, over and over again. Officer Jim Keller. He was listed in a suspicious overtime log. He signed off on 2 missing drug evidence forms. He was mentioned in a side note beside a large cash drop from a 1991 bus. And Emily had written his name at least 5 times in the margins of her notes. Sometimes circled, sometimes underlined. Jim Keller wasn't just a name. He was a pattern, and he had been Emily's patrol partner for over 5 years. He was with her almost every night on duty. They shared a car, a radio, and a bond. But now, detectives had to ask a painful question: was Jim just a witness? Or had he been part of the cover-up all along? And worse, was he the one who made sure Emily never got to tell anyone the truth? Officers from the old department still remembered Jim and Emily. They were like brother and sister, one said. They had each other's backs, always. They trained together, ate lunch together, responded to every major call as a team. Some even joked they were closer than married couples. She trusted him with her life, said one officer. If something big was happening, she told Jim first. Photos from the late 80s showed them side by side smiling at crime scenes, patrolling in parades, standing shoulder to shoulder at award ceremonies. If Jim had a secret, Emily would have found it, and that's exactly what scared people. Now, because maybe she had, and maybe that secret was the reason she disappeared. Neil Carter revealed something chilling. 3 days before Emily vanished, she came to him in a panic. She said she had confronted Jim, Neil explained. She asked him straight up, "Are you part of this?" Neil asked her what he said. She told me he froze. Didn't deny it. Didn't admit it. Just stared at her. Emily didn't tell anyone else. She didn't want to get him in trouble until she was sure, Neil said. She still hoped he'd come clean. But after that conversation, things got worse. Emily told Neil her house phone started ringing in the middle of the night. No one on the line. Her patrol car was moved once, just a few inches, like someone had been inside. She said Jim had started acting distant, nervous. Emily wasn't sure what he was capable of, but Neil remembered her exact words. If something happens to me. It started with Jim. According to Neil, the last time Emily was seen alive, she thought she was chasing a lead. She told me she was meeting someone, he said. A source with proof. She was excited, thought it would break everything wide open. She didn't say where, just that it was outside town. Detectives now believe that source was a fake call. A trapped-out record showed Jim was on duty that night. And strangely, he never reported being with Emily, despite sharing the same shift. Neil thinks Jim used their patrol codes to send her a message, something only she would recognize as real. She thought she was walking into a meeting, Neil said. Instead, she walked into an ambush. And that old farmhouse? It was the perfect place. Quiet, isolated, and owned by someone who'd never talk. Until now. Detectives brought Jim Keller into the station for a follow-up interview. He looked calm at first. Confident, like he'd done nothing wrong. But when they mentioned the farmhouse, his eyes shifted. They showed him a map with a red dot. His cell phone had pinged near that exact location the night Emily disappeared. Jim stuttered. I drive that road sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. Then they brought up the missing evidence logs. Jim said he didn't remember signing them. Next came the old overtime reports. Dates didn't match. His explanation made no sense. His voice got quiet. His hands started to shake. Finally, they asked the big question. Did you kill Emily Rivers? Jim didn't answer. He just stared at the wall. Silence filled the room. He didn't deny it. He didn't say yes. He just stopped talking. The mask was slipping, and everyone in that room knew they were looking at her killer. The next morning, detectives returned with a warrant for Jim's arrest. He wasn't home. His patrol car was gone. His phone was off, but they found his truck parked near a trail by the river. Officers searched the woods, calling his name. Then movement. Jim ran. 2 trees, over rocks, toward the old town bridge. Officers chased him, shouting, "Stop! Hands up!" He didn't stop. He reached the edge of the bridge, breathing hard. For a moment, it looked like he might jump. But before he could move, 2 officers tackled him from behind. He hit the ground hard. They cuffed him. He didn't fight. He didn't speak. His face was pale. Empty. No anger. No regret. Just blank. As if something inside him had already died. He was placed in the back of a squad car, the same kind he once drove beside Emily. Now, he was the one behind bars. And justice was finally starting to catch up. The arrest of Jim Keller hit the town like a bomb. People stood in silence outside the courthouse. Some cried. Some just shook their heads. Emily and Jim were supposed to be the good ones. The pair everyone trusted. Now it was clear. One of them had been hiding a deadly secret. News stations showed old photos of them together, laughing in uniform. Now those images felt like lies. Michael, Emily's husband, stood before cameras, holding a worn photo of her. "She died trying to do the right thing," he whispered, "and it cost her everything." The town held a candlelight vigil that night. Hundreds came. Officers in uniform. Teens who'd found her. Neighbors. Strangers. They lit candles, laid flowers, whispered prayers. For 7 years, Emily Rivers had been a mystery. Now, the truth had come out, but the price had been so high. One brave woman tried to expose corruption. and someone she trusted more than anyone. Made sure she couldn't. The courtroom was packed. Michael sat in the front row, holding Emily's old badge in his hand. Her parents sat beside him, holding each other tightly. Across the room, Jim Keller stood in a suit and handcuffs. He didn't look at anyone. The judge asked the jury for their decision. On the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant, James Keller, guilty. Gasps filled the room. Some people cried. Michael shut his eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just nodded slowly. 7 years of waiting. 7 years of pain. And now, finally, the truth was out. The judge continued. Guilty on tampering with evidence. Guilty on obstruction. Guilty on abuse of power. Jim didn't react. He just stared forward blank as he was led out of the courtroom. Someone in the back whispered, "She got him." And they were right. Emily may not have lived to see justice, but because of her, it finally arrived. After Jim's conviction, the department had no choice. Internal Affairs opened a full investigation. They pulled every case Jim had worked, every form he signed, every officer he reported to. What they found shocked even the most senior staff. At least 5 other officers were tied to fake overtime pay, stolen drug money, or destroyed evidence. 2 retired quietly. 3 were fired. 1 was arrested for obstruction. Whispers that had circled the department for years were finally confirmed. Emily had been right. The corruption ran deep and for a long time. No one had wanted to look. Now they had no choice. The department promised to rebuild, but trust was harder to fix. 2 months later, the department held a press conference. The new police chief stepped up to the podium. He held back tears as he said, "We failed one of our own." Emily's name was fully restored in department records. Her file was cleared. Her honors were returned. They admitted she had been trying to expose corruption, that she was right, that she died a hero. A week later, her name was added back to the fallen officer memorial in front of the station. Michael was there. So were her parents. Officers in dress uniforms saluted. Bagpipes played softly. And as the sun set, a plaque was unveiled. Officer Emily Rivers, end of watch. September 1991. She stood for the truth. On the anniversary of her disappearance, the town held a candlelight vigil. Hundreds gathered in the square. Candles flickered. Old friends stood shoulder to shoulder. Teenagers held signs that read, "Justice for Emily." Michael stood on a small stage. He looked down at his notes, then folded them up. He spoke from the heart. She didn't run, he said quietly. She stood her ground, and she paid for it. The crowd went still. She found something she wasn't supposed to see. She could have looked away. She could have kept quiet, but she didn't. His voice cracked. Emily believed in this town, in the badge, in doing what was right, even when it was hard. People in the crowd began to cry. "She died trying to protect us," he said, "and we owe her everything." Michael lit the final candle. Held it high. And whispered, "Thank you, Emily." 1 year after the trial, the town did something it had never done before. They built a statue, a full-size bronze sculpture of Officer Emily Rivers now stands outside the police station. She's in uniform, one hand on her radio, the other resting near her badge. She's not smiling. She's standing tall, serious, focused, strong. Beneath her feet is a plaque that reads, "She stood for the truth. We will not forget." The day it was unveiled, people filled the street. Former officers came from out of state. Kids held flowers and placed them at the base. Michael stood nearby, hands in his pockets. He didn't speak this time. He didn't need to. Every person there understood. Emily had been more than a patrol officer. She had been a symbol of courage, of honesty, of what it meant to do the right thing even when it was deadly. And now, her story was part of the town forever. Weeks later, a records clerk at the department was finishing some routine cleanup. He was boxing up the remaining evidence from the Emily Rivers case. Old reports, burned folders, a few copies of her notes. Then he noticed something odd. Tucked inside a file sleeve was a single piece of paper. It looked like a ripped notebook page, yellowed, creased, almost missed. He pulled it out. One name, one badge number. No first name. No notes beside it. Just the last name Emily had written in thick ink, underlined once. The clerk blinked. He checked the badge number against the system. Nothing. He tried again. No match. It wasn't assigned to anyone in the department, past or present. But the number looked real. The format matched all the others. He brought it to his supervisor. They called the detectives because somehow, after everything, this name had never been investigated. Someone had slipped through. The screen fades to black. A single light flickers over Emily's statue. Then, a voice reads quietly, "One name on Emily's list was never identified. That officer hasn't been seen in years." The badge number didn't match any official records. Some believe he's dead. Others say he's just waiting. The music grows quiet. Waiting for someone else to ask the wrong question. Waiting for the next Emily Rivers. The camera pans to a box in the evidence room, sealed, dusty, untouched. Inside, Emily's last notes. A voice on an old cassette tape. A final line scribbled on the corner of a page. "There's one more. I know it." The screen fades to black. Again. And in the final frame, a question appears in white letters. Was the real mastermind ever caught? Then cut to silence. Roll credits.